Hello, everybody. So here is Black Angel again, and I'm here to talk to you about ISTPs. So, who are ISTPs? First of all, ISTPs are TI dominants. So, what does it mean to be a TI dominant? Being a TI dominant means that the person thinks in categories. So, these people are people that think in categories. The ISTP specifically has a very structured categorization of what the world is in their head. And everything new that comes in needs to fit in their idea of what the world is, in their structure of the world. TI is categorization. It's also in-depth understanding. When we talk about TI, we're talking about in-depth understanding, which is opposed to TE, which is a lot of information, so knowing a lot of facts. TI dominants have this characteristic of having a structure of the world in their head. And whenever they stumble into something new, they're going to have to elaborate on this thing, analyze this thing, and figure it out from a logic standpoint. So we're talking about people that are extremely logical. And they are so logic that they actually think according to the rules of syllogism. So TI basically represents the idea of Kant's thinking, of Kant's thought. So if you know Kant a little bit, you will know what I'm talking about. So that's introverted thinking, the utmost expression of human rationality according to some philosophers in the past. So our ISTPs are the guys that apply this kind of logic to the real world, to the world they have in front of them. They are sensors, so we're talking about the here and now and the reality that surrounds them. So that's where TI is applied for an ISTP. So they normally have a very strong awareness and a very strong idea of anything revolving around them. What else can I say? Yeah, they are so conservative in their way of thinking that anything that goes against their dominant function, so against their idea and their structure, anyone that tries to contradict them is going to be excluded as someone that doesn't get it. So those who are going to get it are good to go. Those who won't get it, they just don't have it in them. And they are simply excluded from the TI dominance life. That's how TI works. That is what you should be looking for when you're looking for a TI dominant. Someone that has such a strong attachment to their own ideas of how the world works, that anything going against that is going to be rejected to the point of exclusion from the person's life. That's a TI dominant. Just a parenthesis that has nothing to do with ISTPs. One thing that I would like to say is that ISFJs and INFJs can learn from ISTPs in this sense because their self-esteem is based exactly on the strength of their beliefs, of their introverted thinking. So acting like an ISTP can be a step forward, can help reach a step forward in personal growth. And do not be excessive, I'm not saying that, but refusing different ways of thinking can help you feel more self-assured. That's something to consider. Anyway, back to our TI dominants, our ISTPs. Like I said, they categorize everything. Now, my favorite example of a TI dominant that you can find in psychology is Jean Piaget. If you check Piaget's theory, of children's development, children's cognitive development specifically, you're going to see that this guy is thinking in a very structured and a very static way. That's exactly how TI in the dominant position works. So from this age to this age, the child behaves this way, and this way. From this stage to this stage, the child is going to behave this way, and this way. That's the reality that Piaget was having in front of himself and he was seeing. So that's what he was describing, his categorization of the reality he had in front of himself. And one thing that is particularly interesting is that he was trying through this research to confirm Kant's theories. So this is what TI in the dominant position is and what it represents. Now that we've been talking about TI in the dominant position, we can pass to extroverted sensing in the secondary position. So extroverted sensing in the second position means that this person is extremely creative in matters of strength, power, political influence. So they can have periods in which they apply their political influence to the people surrounding them, and periods in which they instead do not. Some moments they can apply extroverted sensing, some moments they do not. They decide creatively when to apply strength, how to apply their strength, and if they feel like applying their strength. Normally, what an ISTP does with his or her extroverted sensing is help fix the systems that they find around them. So if an ISTP is well versed in computer science, for example, and they stumble into a computer person, into an office, where the person at the computer is having difficulties because of the system, the ISTP is going to stay there and help until everything else is solved for everybody to be able to use it. Now, something that doesn't have to do directly with extroverted sensing, but it is connected to extroverted sensing in the creative position, ISTPs tend to be lone wolf, and this has to do with their creative application of extroverted sensing. They only do that in specific moments, and not all the time, like instead ESTPs do. So the main difference, the first difference that will strike you between an ESTP and an ISTP is that the ESTP is going to have a whirlwind of people around them on whom they're going to apply their political influence and their strength all the time. Whereas the ISTP is going to be a lone wolf, someone that stays on their own and doesn't really mix with society. They do not really have a lot of social life. But when they move in society, they create a kind of whirlwind of people. Because they have this ability to create, to lead people and to take them where they need to be. Normally, what they prefer doing is finding an ENFJ or someone that wants to be a leader and create the whirlwind around this person. Because again, being introverted means that the person is not going to enjoy having a lot of people and a lot of attention around them. So the ISTP is well versed in using this ability for others and to help others reach their goals in matters of applying political influence, reaching strength, obtaining some sort of strength, or reaching a specific goal. And they normally prefer remaining somehow behind the curtain. Now pay attention, because ESTPs TI tend to have a similar attitude in some ways. Not always they are, anyway, ESTPs, so they do have a whirlwind of people around them, but they might have a slightly smaller whirlwind of people, and you might not actually notice it as compared to ESFJs or ENFJs or other people in the world that also have the ability to create big groups of people, or ESCJs, for example. So we're going to talk about ESTJs. That's a topic that I find particularly interested because I'm starting to understand the type. So yeah. Anyway, back to our ISTPs. Their inferior function is extrovert feeling. So they have issues finding enjoyment, finding fun, amusement, and actually finding the way to stop being so focused and hyper concentrated. They tend to get lost and wrapped up in their work and in everything that they're doing, and that is actually something tiring over time. So even if they're introverted thinking, sometimes they would need a little bit of something to lighten their situation up, to lighten their head a little bit. If you think about Sheldon, which is one of my favorite examples of ISTPs in movies, or anyway on TV, Sheldon Cooper. If you think of Sheldon Cooper, one thing that happens to him is that he's so wrapped up in his trails of thoughts that sometimes he gets stuck in his theories and he cannot step forward in his work. So that's where extroverted feeling comes in, with lightening up the atmosphere, finding amusement, creating a positive environment, finding fun over time. That's what ENFJs do, create positive atmospheres over time, creating enjoyment and emotional contagion so that people find themselves in a sort of submerged land, where they can enjoy themselves and have fun and simultaneously think and debate about things without being contradicted. That's the environment ENFJs strive for and ISTPs actually need. Another thing that extrovert feeling inferior means is difficulties in figuring out if people around the person are hostile or friendly. So friend or foe, this is a little bit one of the biggest concerns of an ISTP. Is this person a friend or a foe? Friend or foe? They can become pretty paranoid about that topic if they don't have anyone with extroverted feeling around them, helping them sorting out friends from foes. So they really need this kind of support to keep their calm and to keep their cool. Now, introverted intuition in the third position, we have seen already with ISFPs the other day. This is very similar. So if ISFPs are enforcers of personal ethics, ISTPs instead are enforcers of categories of the world in some way. So they tend to be pretty strict and to kind of in some way impose their idea of how the world works. One conversation that I had with an ISTP once was that this person said, men like younger women, period. And I'm like, okay, what about the cougars and MILFs then? And he's like, that's all a mediatic thing. It doesn't exist. And men like younger women, period. So I was a little bit struck by that, and at some point he looks at me and he goes like, well, that's on a general basis. If there is an exception, then it's an exception. Okay, so this is the rule, but if there is an exception to the rule, there's going to be an exception. That's how they work. There is no other way. That's how they see things, and that's how what they're going to insist on. That things are that specific way that they see. They also tend to repeat always the same things, so they kind of feel like broken discs, and they're always too right because their self-esteem is based on coherence. So they do everything in their power to result and be absolutely coherent with themselves. So that's why they always repeat the same things. So ISTPs are going to tell you things once and then repeat it again and over again and say the same things over and over again, so that thing results coherent with the previous one. They very rarely change their mind on anything because that would destroy their self-esteem. So yeah, I think this is pretty much the biggest points that we can make about ISTPs. What else can I say? Most likely Enneagram for ISTPs, I believe Enneagram 8, Enneagram 3, and possibly, I'm not entirely sure which other one. I would go with this two for the moment. Even if Enneagram 8 tends to be a very extroverted one. But it's still a possibility. I think it is a possibility. So I was about to say Enneagram 5, but they have a too strong command of TI to have issues with TI. So Enneagram 5 is basically the TI issues Enneagram. And it solves itself by solving TI matters. So ISTPs are strong at their TI, so it is almost impossible that they could be Enneagram 5, in my opinion. Enneagram 6 is a very likely Enneagram for an ISTP, in my opinion, especially if they have weak extroverted sensing, because that could mean that they are in some way insecure. They do not have the unfailing self-assuredness of ESTPs. They are more doubtful as individuals and less rocky in that sense. So yeah, Enneagram 6 is most definitely a possibility. So I would go for 8, less likely, Enneagram 3 for extroverted sensing matters, and that weak extroverted feeling and the need to figure out who friends are and if the person can be loved. And the other one would be Enneagram 6 because of the big doubting and weak introverted intuition. So this would be the main Enneagrams. With whom do ISTPs get along? ISTPs are very strange people. Like I said, they are lone wolves, so they get along with themselves pretty well, and they don't really feel the urge to be part of anything. But at the same time, they can use that extroverted thinking. They can use their extroverted sensing, so they can switch from being Mr. Miss Popularity to be Mr. Miss Lone Wolf, basically. They're mostly the lone wolf anyway. They're 99% lone wolf. But obviously when you see them in society, you're seeing them in society. So, yeah. So with whom do they get along? Obviously ENFJs. They have a strong need to have ENFJs around them. INFJs are also another type with whom they get along. ESTPs, obviously. Who else? ESFJs, maybe. ISFPs are another type with whom they kind of get along. There are weird clashes anyway between ISTPs and ISFPs, because what I see happening the most is that the ISTP sees that this person is not exactly what they're looking for as an individual, because they have this strong rationality. And on the other side, they find this kind of weird funny bunny with this light hat that looks at them, and the ISFP is not going to split between knowledge and understanding. So they see the preparation of the ISTP and they read it as knowledge. So they expect the ISTP to talk as an ENTJ, basically, or to be an ENTJ. And they start applying demands, extroverted thinking, inferior demands. And the situation gets pretty weird because the ISTP tends to, in some way, make fun of the ISFP, give them some of what they're asking and something else. So the situation there is kind of weird. I've seen that happen and it's pretty funny. Anyway, yeah. That's an ISTP with whom ISTPs get along the best. ENFJs mostly, and then they're the beta quadra. They're literally allergic to ENFPs. They have an allergy, and that's because it's their conflicting type. So everything that for the INTJ, sorry, is gold, for the ENFP is going to be shit, and vice versa. Everything that for the ENFP is gold, for the ISTP is going to be shit. So, yeah, that's pretty much how it works. So this is pretty much everything I have about ISTPs. I hope it helped, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.